Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Paul Rogers and I'm a cybersecurity trainer and engineer of 20 years. This video is designed to help small businesses who are on a budget but want to do their best to be secure in 2025 and beyond. Before we delve into the tips, let's take a look at the stats around data breaches so you get a better understanding of the scale of the breach problem in 2025. First up is the shocking statistics of how small businesses are forced to close within months of a significant data breach. The first statistic of 60% closure within 6 months here comes from the National Cybersecurity Alliance, while the second statistic is reported by the British Chambers of Commerce, which shows that 93% of businesses that suffer an extended data loss, i.e. longer than 10 days, file for bankruptcy within a year, while 50% file for bankruptcy immediately. The next 3 points on our slide show us the average cost of a breach, the time to detect, and time to recover. So what does this all mean if you're a small business? Well, one thing's for sure, you don't want to find out, which is why I'm here to help you with these cybersecurity tips. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to our channel at dposolutions.privacy, where you'll find great useful videos on a whole range of related topics, most of which is free. So don't forget to like and comment before you move on to the next video, as your participation helps grow this channel. You might be surprised about how many misconceptions small business owners have about security and the realities of the problems it can pose. So let's take a look at some common ones here. Possibly the most common misconception is, I'm too small to be a target. Cyber criminals are only interested in the big guys. Wrong. Up to 46% of breaches happen in small businesses. Second, I downloaded an antivirus software on the web last year for the office, installed it, no problems in my network that I'm aware of. Wrong. Antivirus and other malware protection doesn't address human error problems like clicking on a link, social engineering, or brand new threats known as zero-day threats, which technology alone cannot contain. Another excuse is, I got bigger issues for my business to contend with, things like getting a new business, collecting unpaid invoices, paying staff, and keeping the lights on, and a message that cyber can wait. Yes, these are all problems assuming you have a business. See the statistics on the previous slide if you don't believe me. Or some other favorites like, I just don't have the resources. It's all too confusing, the security, and I'll call someone I think I might know if there's a problem. Well, calling a friend won't fix a data breach that's already happened, and as the old saying says, failing to plan is planning to fail. Do any of these excuses sound familiar? Well, don't be hard on yourself, as cybersecurity can often seem like Fugazi, invented by salesmen to sell more products to the unwitting. Well, I'm here as a cybersecurity pro who's also a small business owner to help you get on the right track with your business and cybersecurity in 2025. I'm not here to endorse any products or service, but just to share with you some advice that I've found helpful if you're willing to devote a little time to research and implementation. Before we dive into the tips, let's address some of the mindset shifts you're likely going to need to security as a small business owner. Let's be honest, most small business owners will treat cybersecurity as a burden, and from the point of view of keeping it to the least I can get away with because it doesn't make me money and I don't have the bandwidth or appetite to learn it. That's where a mindset change is needed. Accept that you're going to have to act like the big boys and girls in business in your approach to security, albeit on a smaller scale. Security is not a once a week or even once a month thing. It's all the time, or a business as usual item as it's sometimes called. This means that your perspective needs to change so that every time you think about a business process, you'll have to think about security as well. So for instance, I want to send sales leads to my sales manager every day via email. Your next question should be, how do I do that securely so personal data is protected? Or another example might be, I want to check credit history for potential buyers and keep reports and FICO scores on file. Again, security would be a top concern here. You'll need to ask, where will these reports be stored? Who will have access to them, and how will access be logged? And also, can the data be encrypted? If it's physical paper, you might ask the question, how will it be secured? How long will it be kept for? Will it be copied for backup purposes? So for a mindset change, you have to understand what security is designed to offer, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or CIA for short. This foundational principle of security should help frame all your decision making in your environment. So using more examples, integrity relates to data remaining verifiably unchanged, which could be enforced by error checking of data being transferred between 2 points in your network, or checking that configuration files have not been altered on web servers, which might be an indication of hacker activity. The availability piece of the CIA is there to focus your attention on things like data backups, network redundancy, staffing arrangements, and disaster recovery plans, etc. Then to complete this triangle is the confidentiality piece, where we think about things like encryption, passwords, access controls, firewalls, even locked file cabinets and non-disclosure agreements. But we're not finished there with the foundational part of security. There is also another triad, and that is people, process, and technology. This fundamental principle means that every security control in your environment has each of these components. So for an example here, you have a firewall protecting your website traffic. For this to work effectively, there has to be a person operating the firewall, adding the rules, reviewing alerts, etc. That's the people aspect. The process aspect could be how a rule is added, such as a change request being submitted by the firewall admin to the change control system. The technology part could be the type of firewall used, which could be a web application firewall, and then the type of management software it uses. What message am I trying to convey here? Well, it's that there is a methodology and purpose behind security, and when you're aware of it, your resistance to investing time and money will lower along with your risk profile. So let's start looking at our top 5 cybersecurity tips for small business on a budget, which we'll cover here in detail over the next few slides. Top of our list is passwords, because they really are the first line of defense for all businesses and cost very little to implement in the scheme of things. Next we have encryption, which is there because so many regulations require it, and it's expected by customers who are using your website and sharing their data with others. Then we have phishing prevention, as phishing is the #1 threat to practically every business out there. And then we cover patching and vulnerability management, as unpatched systems are like leaving the door open for hackers. We then cover a set of policies and procedures, for without them you're much more likely to make mistakes, get sued, and risk the business overall. And then finally, if you stick to the end of the video, we cover arguably the most important practice as a bonus at the end of the video. And we also include a downloadable document with links to this presentation, which are mentioned throughout the video. Manu Gandhi, president of IT solutions at Xerox, said, "I encourage every organization to prioritize strong password controls as a critical part of cybersecurity." He continues on to say, "Strong passwords aren't just good practice, they're essential to keeping your business secure." Having that said, we're going to spend some time here on passwords, as they often are the weakest link on a computer network, as computer users are often unaware of how easy it is for hackers to crack weak passwords in seconds. This password cracking often happens when phishing email links are clicked on and malware gets onto the network. The malware may contain programs that set about looking for administrative passwords on the network, which then allows malicious software like ransomware to get installed. The good news is, though, that there is free password guidance from a US government authority called NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which should be reviewed by you. The top things they recommend for passwords is that you make your passwords long and random. In fact, 15 characters are better in length, and using passphrases with randomly put together strings is ideal. So a passphrase might be flight, road water or night church river. Essentially a mix of random words. The rationale is that passphrases are easier to remember by employees and yet can be difficult to crack by hackers, particularly when they're over 15 characters. NIST also recommends that user accounts be locked out after a certain number of failed attempts, usually 3 to 5 attempts, and to use multi-factor authentication, or MFA as it's called, which means using a password plus another means of authentication, such as a one-time code, text message, email verification, PIN, or biometric challenge. The use of strong passwords is really a mindset change in an organization and gains you the biggest value for effort. All operating systems and most major online account providers will allow you to set strong passwords and use multi-factor authentication these days, giving you a much needed first line of defense for you and your employees. NIST also recommends a good password manager, which we'll now cover in the next slide. So why do I need a password manager? Well, password managers have become a must-have for business owners with the rise of phishing attacks and the complexity of modern work environments. They also serve as a practical purpose in preventing business owners and account custodians from losing access to data when the main account holder has left the organization. To drive home the point about work environment complexity, NordPass, a password manager software company, reports that the average person has now about 168 online accounts and that most people will reuse the same passwords over and over for most of them. This means, of course, that if I'm a hacker and I hack one of your online accounts, there's a good chance I'll get into access to many of your other accounts that I find out about. All this means in practice that humans are less likely to be able to manage passwords for all their work and personal accounts without the assistance of technology. Hence, businesses, no matter how small, need to be ready with a password manager. So what does a password manager offer? A good password manager will give you the convenience of generating strong, unique passwords for all your accounts where you only have to authenticate once. Good password managers will also advise you if you're visiting an unsafe website. It will allow you to store all types of personal information such as credit card details and ID document copies, and will be accessible from both mobile devices and computers. Most password managers have browser integrations so that they will let you autofill password fields on web pages and notify you if your password may have been breached by scouring known password lists found on the dark web. So what are examples of good password managers for my company systems? Well, there are a number of brands of password managers that can generate passphrases for you on all of your devices. One popular password manager is Bitwarden, as recommended by Wired.com and other sites. The basic version is free and it contains many useful features such as a password field autofill, password vault, passwordless authentication, and more. I also mentioned the password manager NordPass above, which offers password storage. It also offers password field autofill, strong password generation, and breached password list scanning. It's a pay-only software, however. So how do I audit password quality on my network? This is a great practice to do, but is often overlooked by small businesses, unfortunately. For Windows systems, PowerShell scripts can be used to check for password quality on the network, as described in manageengine.com. By the way, these links are included in the end slide if you stick to the end of the video. So for other types of devices such as broadband routers and managed smart devices, you should check manually that default passwords are not in use by cross-referencing the device type and model with default lists which are easily found on Google. So if you're looking to get a crash course on the terminology and features to look for, when I might suggest some independent government resources such as the UK National Cybersecurity Centre and the US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency called CISA. So this is where a bit of the legwork on your part comes in as a business owner to get informed and make important decisions about security in your business. The more detail-oriented you are, the more the risk is reduced. Number 2 on our list is encryption. As you may know, encryption is a must under all major compliance laws and frameworks, which means that it's something you have to think about when you store and process customer personal data, or when employees connect to wireless networks, or use company laptops and copy data to removable devices. Edward Snowden said, "Encryption is the defense against the dark arts in the digital realm." So as a small business owner, what does this mean for you? Well, firstly, think about where customer and employee data could be stored on your network. Think about laptops and make sure that they have encryption enabled at boot time, and that any removable drives, including thumb drives, are also encrypted. Lost laptops and drives can be a nightmare for businesses when the device is unencrypted, as customers, employees, and authorities can be very unforgiving when personal data is compromised. So be diligent about checking this one, and also start thinking about where personal and financial data may be stored and transmitted on your network. It might behoove you to start drawing out a diagram of your network, if you've not already done so, to get you thinking about everywhere your data is and who it is shared with and how. This practice will prepare you for another important step, which is creating an asset register. We cover what this is in an upcoming slide. So how do I secure data held in databases? So if you're storing hundreds, and definitely if it's thousands of personal data records in your databases, then database encryption is a must. Most database types will offer encryption options at the table, column, and database level. This will take a little more configuration and cost to set up, but it's not really an option if you're data processing at scale. It's something that you must do. So instructions for encrypting a Microsoft SQL Server database can be found on YouTube. Again, the links are included at the end. So you get a picture of what that looks like. There's a bit of command line configuration involved, as you'll see, and in this case you'll likely be seeking some support if you're feeling faint-hearted for tech configuration. So without going into too much depth, I'll touch on some of the other considerations with databases. So just as important as the encryption technology is the handling of encryption keys and certificates associated with the database. It's a little bit more advanced of a topic, but something like Azure Key Vault, which you'll find about it on learn.microsoft.com, is the preferred option for SQL. Amazon Web Services has its own key management server and secrets manager for the same purpose if you're using their cloud services. In addition to all the cryptographic security, you'll also want to think about authentication and who can administer and access what in the database. Microsoft Entra, E-N-T-R-A, authentication is the recommended solution for this, where there are many resources on the learn.microsoft.com and YouTube to cover this. So let's shift a little to the next encryption topic, which is wireless. So how do I encrypt wireless connections? Well, when it comes to encryption of wireless access, this is something that is usually enabled by default on routers, but it's important to ensure that encryption is up to a good standard. So WPA-PSK or WPA3 with AES encryption is generally recognized as a de facto standard. Again, there are resources on YouTube which show you the concepts involved. You'll find the link in the resources at the end. So in addition to the encryption type, you'll also have to ensure that you replace default passwords with stronger passwords on the device, and that you're avoiding use of public Wi-Fi with company equipment, as it's inherently unsafe. Other more advanced settings should be applied on wireless routing, such as signal attenuation, MAC address filtering, and logging, with an extra layer of security on top by using VPN software. If this is something you want to learn more about, comment below the video and I'll create a video about wireless security and VPN security to help you out further. So the next question is, how do I encrypt data in transit like web traffic, email, and sensitive application data? Well, for websites and sensitive application data such as credit card data, TLS certificates are now the standard practice. These certificates are primarily used to encrypt data transmitted between a website and a user's browser, or when a web service communicates with another service. These certificates are designed to protect sensitive information and verify a website or web service identity. Some of the certificates that you might find out there include DigiCert, GlobalSign, and Intrust, and are generally renewed every 1 to 2 years. So for secure email, there may be more types of cryptographic protocols used in addition to TLS, such as SMIME, PGP, and START TLS, depending on which client you're using. For email encryption to be fully secure, both sender and receiver need to be configured with the necessary keys, public and or private keys. Microsoft uses its own certificate service to support secure email in Exchange and elsewhere in their services suite. So what does this mean from a business owner perspective? Well, ensure your website serves traffic over HTTPS and that any communication of personal, financial or confidential data, whether it be through email or application, needs to be encrypted. Cryptography can be complex and intensive to set up, so if you want more information, again, you can comment below with your questions. The number 3 on our list is phishing. Now that we've covered passwords and encryption, it's now time to focus on phishing in more detail. Most business owners will have heard of it but may not know the true scale of the problem of phishing and may believe that they're too small to be a target or that they have an email scanner already which will catch the bad stuff. Well, let's crush that myth now. 1.2% of all email globally is reckoned to be malicious, which is huge when you consider there's an average of 375 billion emails sent and received on a daily basis in 2025. Remembering also that phishing is the number 1 method of attack and can put you out of business. And noting the earlier statistic that about 60% of small businesses go under within 6 months of a big data breach. This means, of course, that you need to be a little bit more on the paranoid side with email and expect that some emails will get through your filters and some emails will look very convincing. James Scott of the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technology is often quoted after he said that a single phishing email can bypass multi-million-dollar enterprise security solutions if an adversary deceives a cyber-hygienically apathetic employee into opening the attachment or clicking a malicious link and thereby compromising the entire network. This kind of sums up the problem where security apathy is your worst enemy. So as a small business owner, what can you do? Well, a good first step is to educate yourself on what phishing is, which is why we created a free training video on our channel, which will feature at the end of this video in an in-video link. This video will give you a half-hour primer on what phishing means and the different types of phishing that exist. You can then share this video with your staff members as part of your ongoing training plan at no cost. So what are the top risks that phishing poses for my company? Well, phishing can open a door for hackers by bypassing even the best technology. When an employee clicks on a link or opens an attachment or doesn't pay attention to possible risks in emails, hackers win. Clicking on a link or attachment can, of course, cause malware to be downloaded directly onto your machine and then onto your network without detection. This could lead to a very costly ransomware infection where stolen data, account credentials and card data and all of course lost business if the breach gets publicly disclosed. Again, contrary to many small business owner beliefs that hackers aren't interested in them because of their size, it's simply not the case. Most phishing attacks are not targeted and are merely a product of indiscriminate mass emailing attacks, which owe success to those who are less prepared. Having said this, though, there is a class of targeted attacks that are often directed at the big guys, but this is in the minority. This kind of phishing attack may be referred to as spear phishing and routinely shows up as an invoice redirection fraud, online meeting requests from purported colleagues, and calls to action from what appears to be the CEO or some other senior executive. So just as a quick explainer on invoice redirection fraud, this type of fraud involves changing bank account and routing numbers on legitimate looking invoices with the intention of getting paid to a fraudulent bank account. Spear phishing, while less common in smaller business, still happens and is something to be particularly aware of, given that it plays on the assumption of trust between coworkers and known third parties. Employees are less likely to question an email from someone that looks to be a coworker or from a company like Microsoft. Hackers play on this social conditioning, hence the danger of spear phishing. So also remember that phishing isn't limited to email. It can often apply to clickable links on text messages, which is known as smishing, and now even on fraudulent voice messages known as vishing. A few cases of vishing have been detected where fake company executive voicemails were left on employee mailboxes, asking them to do things like make a donation through a fraudulent web address, some of these attacks were known to have worked. But worryingly, generative AI has allowed phishing attempts to become even more sophisticated, where new types of attacks are even more difficult to detect. So what can I do about phishing in my small business? Well, as phishing is primarily a human behavior issue, awareness training is the best way to tackle the issue. This is where a lot of small companies fall down. The Insurance Bureau of Canada reports that only 34% of small business and medium-sized companies provide mandatory cybersecurity awareness. And for those that do provide training, it's usually done once a year for between 1 and 2 hours. Even with once a year training, remember that psychologists report that most people will forget 90% of what they learn in a month and 98% within a year. So to combat this, it's best to have more diverse and spread out training. Think about telling the same message in different ways several times a year. So what do I mean by several ways? Well, think about attack simulation training, such as free ones provided by Microsoft, and quizzes that are provided by organizations like the Federal Trade Commission, and then sending out email reminders from reputable sources about phishing, again, such as from Microsoft. It's a good idea to create a calendar for yourself with recurring tasks, such as sending out email reminders to employees on phishing and other topical security issues, such as on the latest scams going around. So proactivity is the name of the game here, much like servicing your vehicle regularly. So what are the key steps for evaluating and responding to phishing emails in my small business? Evaluating possible phishing emails that arrive in your inbox follows a defined method, starting from the top of the email and down until you hit a red flag. So this starts by checking the sender's information at the top, where you look at the sender's email address, the timestamp, subject, and contact details. This means you're looking for anything that seems odd, such as misspelt email address or subject, or even an out of business hours timestamp like 1 a.m. in the morning, and missing or incomplete contact details. The next step is to look at the inside of the email. So if there are any links, hover over them instead of clicking on them, so you can check the validity of the URL which they lead to. Often these URLs will lead to malicious sites designed to steal your information or download malware. Other things to check for is the message tone and a false sense of urgency to rush you into taking an action before something bad happens, or the possibility that you might miss an opportunity or reward. This might look like a request to pay an overdue invoice before account suspension, or false notification about the security of your account that needs to be addressed immediately. A basic tenet with all emails that request personal information from you, such as account details and passwords, is to contact the organization directly via another method and not through responding directly to the email. Also be careful of emails with conference call links. Check the validity of the URLs by hovering over them first, and then check with the meeting organizer directly if there's any doubt on the validity of the meeting request. So what do you do if you do suspect a phishing email? Well, report them to your colleagues directly, or if you have an IT help desk, so that they will be aware of the issue. Also consider notifying the organization that's being impersonated if there is one, and if it's serious enough, consider reporting it to the Federal Trade Commission or FBI, or the National Cybercrime Center if you're outside the US. Lastly, if you have been compromised, you should have an incident response plan in place to ensure that you have a recovery process ready. Acunetics has a template on their site an incident response template, which you can refer to on acunetics.com. The NIST organization is probably offers the best known framework for incident management, which is downloadable from their site. Their incident management framework can serve as an important roadmap for damage limitation steps in case the worst happens. Number 4 on our list is patching and vulnerability management. Many business owners are unaware of the number of internet-connected devices on their network. So beyond the obvious servers, firewalls, and routers, there is an ever-growing array of smart devices like thermostats, smart appliances, wireless IP cameras, and others, which all pose security risks of their own. This means that there is many more ways for a hacker to get inside networks, which also means that small businesses have to plan on how to monitor, update, and check software on all these devices. So how do you do that? Well, this is where good practices and record keeping become very important. A good start is to develop an approved list of supported devices on your network. So what might that look like? It should be a simple document with a list of supported device types and supported software versions. This is a twin benefit of limiting the number of devices you have to maintain and keeping devices that no longer receive vendor security patches off of your network. After this, it's important to know what you have and where it is on your network. This is often referred to as an asset register, which needs to be continually updated every time a node is added, removed, or changed. What does an asset register look like? Usually we think of it as a spreadsheet or app that stores the type of device, for example a Windows PC, its IP address or IP addresses if there's multiple interfaces, its management IP address if different, the management software used to manage it, device name, physical and logical location, if it's a server, the apps and database that hosts, along with the technical and business owners. An example of a physical and logical location could be a web application firewall called X and a firewall cluster called Y, based in a specific rack at a vendor data center which is based in a location Z. The importance of identifying who the owners are is that the device and any apps or databases it may host will be that somebody is tasked with ensuring everything is patched and replaced if it needs to be decommissioned. It also ensures that any changes are approved by someone who is familiar with the business purpose of the device. So how are all network node IP addresses obtained? This is done through physical checking and network scanning tools like Nmap, which can run on a laptop and be used to plug into different segments of your network. You will likely need some IT support if you're not comfortable doing this task yourself, and special attention needs to be paid to any publicly accessible IP addresses like servers or internet routers and firewalls or remote access gateways, as these devices are the ones hackers probe all the time on the internet. There are free tools for checking TLS certs such as SSL Labs and DNSchecker.org to scan for open ports on your internet-facing devices, which can help you get started on this task. All of the above is a formation of a patching and vulnerability checking program by virtue of having a view of what you have and possibly finding devices you didn't know about. Each type of hardware device, app, and database will have to be included in a patching and monitoring plan. What does that mean? Well, Windows devices will be updated differently than corporate smartphones, for example. You may use native Windows updates or a Windows management tool like Azure Update Management Center, which can centrally report on the compliance of Windows devices, including machines that are connected in via VPN on your network, such as remote access users. Other types of devices, such as wireless access routers, may need to be manually checked periodically for software levels, though most have an auto-update option. Smart devices like thermostats, IP cameras, and appliances which are attached to your network will also have to be considered in a patching plan too. Don't forget about any vendor equipment out there, such as routers that may be used to connect into your network for remote access and support purposes. If it's vendor managed, you'll need to know how they intend on updating their device and perhaps a visibility of your own of their software version and any open ports that are facing the internet. Is all this enough, you might ask? Well, not quite. Even with the best intentions, the security of devices, databases, and apps needs to be cross-checked through a vulnerability scanner which checks the whole network. This will give you a fair level of assurance that your patching is working. Some budget tools to consider are Qualys Community Edition, that's qualys.com. Another one is Tenable Nessus Vulnerability Scanner. And then another one is Greenbone OpenVAS. To get more information about the vulnerability assessment process, see the link in the description at the end. So here's an overview of the benefits of a good vulnerability scanner. 1. Vulnerability scanners reduce the chances of a breach by identifying security flaws and enabling organizations to address them before malicious actors can exploit them, which may cause significant financial and reputational harm. Number 2, they help with meeting compliance obligations for important laws and frameworks like PCI DSS, the credit card data, CPRA, which is California Data Privacy, HIPAA, and NIST, that require a vulnerability management program. Meeting compliance regulations instills a sense of confidence to customers and business partners that you're serious about your obligations in protecting data. Number 3, better asset management. Vulnerability scanners often provide a good way to detect unauthorized devices and apps on the network, as well as vulnerabilities. You certainly wouldn't want a rogue app or wireless device sending sensitive data over the internet back to a cyber gang in Russia. Then fourth on the list, vulnerability scanners will prioritize patching efforts by identifying the most critical vulnerabilities based on severity, potential impact, and exploitability. So this will allow IT teams to focus on addressing the most pressing issues first, optimizing the efficiency of patch management. And then finally, protection against sophisticated threats. Vulnerability scanners are possibly the only way to identify malicious code hidden within applications and services, helping to protect sensitive data and your valuable assets. Number 5 on our list is policies and procedures. Oscar Wilde once said to expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly modern intellect, which is another way of saying that anything can happen, and if you're smart enough, you'll prepare for it. This is one of the cornerstones of policies and procedures, because without them, you open yourself up to being unprepared for hackers, employee lawsuits, operational problems, and regulatory scrutiny, just to name a few. If you're a small business, it might seem like policies are something I'll get around to, or that I trust my staff and they know what they're doing and there's no need to write it down. But employee relations can deteriorate, a serious breach might happen, or someone might leave unexpectedly, leaving you in the lurch, so to speak. So let's take a look at 10 security policies which are standard fare in the information security management space. Number 1, an incident management policy. This describes the procedures for handling security incidents, including breach detection, containment, and recovery. Number 2, data privacy and cookie management policies for website visitors, indicating how customer data is collected and used in your organization and for what period of time. Number 3, an employee acceptable use policy. This includes what is and isn't acceptable when using company assets, including the internet. This should include any monitoring software and CCTV usage that may be used to monitor employee compliance. Number 4, a data backup policy. This policy outlines all the systems that are included in the backup schedule, how frequent the backups happen, and where the backups are stored, and any off-site arrangements. Number 5, an employee training policy. This will outline the frequency and coverage of security training given to each employee and any specific training requirements for particular roles. So a credit card handler may need specific training in payment card compliance, for example. Number 6, a change management policy. Every organization needs a structured and auditable way of making changes in the environment. This could include configuration changes to devices, user account changes, and any planned maintenance outages, for example. Number 7, a password policy. The password policy will specify system scope, requirements for password length, rotation, storage, and review processes. Number 8, a remote access policy. This defines who is entitled to access the network, by what means and by whose authorization. Other elements will need to be considered in the policy, such as user access reviews, access logging, and any usage restrictions such as time restrictions. Number 9 is the data retention policy. This policy is particularly important for privacy regulations like CPRA and GDPR, which require time limitations on processing and storage. Retention policy defines periods for how long each type of data is stored, such as HR data, legal hold data, financial and customer data. This policy will document methods for how retention is enforced and who is responsible for enforcement. And then finally, number 10 on the list, an audit policy. This defines a schedule for what and how often different systems and processes are audited. Some regulations, such as SOX, can be very strict on this requirement, where a schedule must be agreed upon well in advance. From a small business perspective, it's important to conduct reviews of your critical systems by independent experts. Avoid checkbox-only type audits, which means that hands-on testing should be a component and that all critical and medium risks are addressed. So now on to our bonus slide, and arguably the most important part of the mix, which is a disaster recovery plan and backups. So let's talk statistics about this one first. 75% of small businesses do not have a disaster recovery plan, and 60% of all of their business data is held on PC desktops and laptops, while 40% of small and medium businesses don't back up their data at all, and when they do, up to 50% of the restores don't work. Yet backups are arguably the most important thing you can do in your environment. A good backup strategy should be integrated into your disaster recovery plan. But what is a DR plan and why is it so important? A disaster recovery plan is a way to minimize disruptions and ensure business continuity after unforeseen events. It outlines procedures for recovering critical systems and data, enabling a swift return to normal operations and mitigating potential financial and reputational damage. The DR plan is similar to a roadmap for quickly restoring IT infrastructure, including servers, applications, and data, minimizing downtime and preventing data loss. It looks at the criticality of business services and outlines redundancy plans for unavailability of people, and tries to account for all kinds of threats such as ransomware, fire, flood, and others. It also covers your communication strategy with employees, customer suppliers, and regulators if a DR event actually happens. So without a plan, businesses risk prolonged periods of inactivity, leading to lost revenue, productivity, and potential customer dissatisfaction. There are some free resources out there on YouTube to get you up to speed on the finer details here. Some of the ones that I found out there, good ones, was what is a disaster recovery plan and how to make one. And then another was developing a data backup strategy for your business. It's important to note that most compliance regulations and frameworks will specifically require a DR plan, and the more your business grows, the more exposure to hefty legal and financial sanctions if the worst does happen. It's important to note that you should also use an asset register, which I mentioned in the patching and vulnerability management slide, which will be used as a linchpin for creating your DR and backup plans. So what's a commonly used backup strategy? A common backup strategy that you see out there is the 3-2-1 backup rule. The 3-2-1 backup rule is a simple, effective strategy for keeping your data safe. It advises that you keep 3 copies of your data on 2 different media, with 1 copy of the data kept off-site. So let's break that down. What would you need to meet that 3-2-1 rule? So if you had 3 copies of your data, 1 on your computer, 1 on an external hard drive, and then 1 in the cloud. So in this case, you're storing on 2 different devices, your computer and an external drive. Technically 3 devices if you're backing it up to the cloud. And then 1 of these copies is off-site, but you're meeting the one part of the 3-2-1 by keeping your data off-site in the cloud. So the next backup strategy to think about are cell phones. As your inventory of corporate phones grows, you might want to consider a mobile device management platform, which can enforce regular backups and give you real-time reporting on backup status of cell phones, along with other features such as their software version, permitted apps, and a remote device wipe if the device is lost. The important thing is that enough storage is allocated in your backup plan for the type of device, and the restores are tested at least once. Manage Engine has an example of one of those mobile device management platforms, but there are many others depending on your service provider. So lastly, but definitely not leastly, test restore functionality for any of your backup types, be they Windows machines or other. Many businesses make the false assumption that a backup complete message is enough, but that's routinely not the case. Restores can fail for a number of reasons such as space issues, corrupt media, bandwidth problems, and lack of documentation in performing the necessary tasks. This can be a real problem in mission-critical tasks like online ordering systems, file transfer servers, and email servers where every minute counts. Well, that brings us to the end of our video. I hope you liked it. I thank you for watching, and if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also, have your say. Did we miss anything? What do you think of these tips? Comment below. And don't forget that there is a downloadable file with the resources mentioned in this video. The link for that downloadable file is in the description. So until next time, that's it for now. Thanks again.